Hi.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Everything Psychic with Gayle and Mary.
Hey.
And tonight, our special guest is Jean McNeese, and
Hi.
Jean is going to talk to us about lithomancy.
Yeah.
And feel free to say hi to us in the chat. And if you've got any questions and comments, go ahead and post them. Jean, welcome. It's so great to have you with us.
Hi. I'm glad to be here with y'all tonight and to talk to y'all about lithomancy. It's a real pleasure that y'all invited me here today.
Hello. We got our first person. Hi, Sheila.
Hi,
Oh,
Renee. Hi,
Renee.
Hi
Sheila.
guys.
Thanks for joining us. So, Jean, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into lithomancy and what is lithomancy?
Yeah, that's the big one. What is
Yeah.
lithomancy?
Well, lithomancy is a form of bone tossing or casting. Now, I started, I've always been an intuitive of some kind. And I so initially picked up tarot cards and other reading systems like that because I thought that that's what you were supposed to do. But none of them actually made sense for me. No matter how much I tried, it just never quite worked for me. And so then just one day, I've always kind of set them to the side. They were there, but, set to the side, and I just got curious one day with the movie. I saw some people tossing some bones and that just phrase. And so I decided to do some research and then found out that almost every culture had a form of bone casting or tossing, whether it was the North American possum scapulas that they threw in the fire and then read the cracks on the bones, or whether or not it was a different system of like an I Ching, which was a three form of bone casting as well. So there's been different forms of it in different styles. But the one I ended up settling on was a lithomancy, which is a type of bone casting. You start with a set of bones of the set, and kind of, and then you can add tokens and amulets and things of different parts, and then prescribe a personal meaning and a story behind it, and so that when you read it, it actually brings kind of like the muscles to the bones, the actions to that core part of that set, and stuff like that. And it just kind of grows from there. Your set can be as small or as large as you wish or to go. So it's really neat. And for me, just when I started to learn and read about the lithomancy and claromancies, because there's so many different forms that fall underneath those umbrella terms, when I read it and started finding out about it, it just kind of made sense and clicked for me. And it just super accurate. Gail can tell you that I've been at the fair, and it's uncanny.
People are always amazed. This whole little ritual that he does every time he casts is just. I mean, it does my heart so good. And then whenever he throws them, and he gets such an accurate reading with it. And I know he was so scared. Can I talk for 20 minutes off of a reading? And then you figured out you can. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it's
you've got a
surprising.
fan in chat, Jean.
Yes, I do. Hi, Amber. Nice to see you.
Oh, hi, Amber. Yes.
Uh,
It's nice to see
So,
all of you.
so do you have your bones with you?
bring them with me. The reason why is because one of the things that I have told people to get a touch in through the Facebook with me, I don't read over the phone or the video, because part of my actual system is I actually have to have you breathe on the bones. The bones are cleansed after every reading, and then you breathe your breath of life, and it tells your story. So I cannot do that, unfortunately, over video. Yeah, I probably should have brought them to let y'all just look at them, but at least my mind was going along that route of that it wouldn't have been
Okay.
the same.
Right.
That would have been nice to see them, but can you tell
I,
us what sorts of objects you have?
well, I have different things. I have several different rib bones that are separators that help me separate the whole set into, okay, this is what this part and this part is telling this story over here, and then this part and this part is telling stories, and so those rib bones separate it. I also have a vertebra bone in there from a cat that represents flexibility. I also have a baculum bone in there from a raccoon, which represents loyalty and fidelity. Let's see. I also have a snake bone in there, which is a different sort of personal flexibility. I have a dog sinus bone for a different type of loyalty, more like a blinded kind of loyalty, of a breast friend kind of loyalty instead of a fidelis romantic um, loyalty, which is the baculum
Mhm.
bone. Let's see, I also have a wishbone in there, and just like the rib bones, those separate, but unlike the other rib bones, they separate in a wishful manner. This is what the reader wishes we would take note of or separate from the rest of our life and focus on. This is what you wish for to be focused on. And then I have other little amulets. Like one of my favorite examples of the duality of what lithomancy can mean as far as the tokens and prescribing your own personal meanings to it is I have a arcade token. It's a very old, like from, it almost looks like from the 20s, okay, and it just represents one side is nostalgia and then the other side is regression, or when you've gone backwards in your old habits and thought patterns and things like that. Well, for somebody else, that arcade coin can actually have a monetary value. They could use that arcade coin and say, "No, that's not what that means. That could be a yes, you're losing your money, or other things like that." Some people could look at a coin and see it as a yes or no on one side instead. Those kind of things and tokens can have so many different meanings and be viewed at so many different ways. That's one of the reasons why I love lithomancy and the way that it can grow. And you can have two people who can have the same core bones in their set, and then it grow into a different set altogether because they prescribe different meanings for the different parts.
Now then,
Yeah.
so since I've met Gene, and Gene came over one day and he read for me, and I'm just fascinated by this. And I have read for many, many years and do many different types of readings. And I've heard, like you said, the throwing the bones, but I had never seen anybody do it. And I saw Gene do this. And I will confess to starting to gather my little objects. I haven't tried to do lithomancy yet, but I have my little bag
Yeah.
things. So, since you didn't bring yours, maybe we can show people some of the types of objects
Sure.
you can use.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
look, here's my turtle,
Turtle?
turtle, and look, has a different side.
Mhm.
And for me, whenever I very first started to practice, um, this was my goddess symbol. And for me, it represents Mother Earth and goddess. So, you know, for her to be coming towards you would be, oh, the goddess is coming towards you and helping you. But if she's going away, you're not as in touch as much.
And
Right.
I would like to take one point because that makes brings up a wonderful point about how on placement, not just your tokens, but your placement, whether the piece is
Mhm.
going towards you, away from you, is touching, is away from the mat, flew off the table. All those can mean entirely different things for what the piece and the parts mean in the story that it tells.
Right. And for instance, you've told me before not to worry if things go off the table or off the cloth because he sets a cloth out. And if they go off, that just means they weren't pertinent to the reading, correct?
Correct. And also, like some people, like your turtle you had just had, where it had a reverse side, and I mentioned the coin or the that arcade coin having a reverse side. Sometimes, like I have one other piece that's a little ceramic bear, okay, and it represents your actual familiar family home, your family's family, you know, their state of being. Now, it has one side that's facing upward, but the reverse side is not a hey, negative or a reversal. It just means that piece doesn't want to talk. It's just not, it's just going to be quiet today. It's just doesn't have anything to say. It's not flying off the table. It's just not talking.
Yeah.
Right. And we need to say hello to Madam Lynette.
Hi, madam.
Hey. Uh, oh, it's nice to see you. So, like I said, I have just gradually added things like a key. It's
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
a little plastic key, but keys are a big deal for me. Keys to knowledge,
Yes.
keys to wisdom. Um, there's so many different things. Like I said, I'm fascinated by this. And if you will go and look at the East Texas Psychic Fair TikTok, if any of you guys are on TikTok, I did a interview with Gene the other day at
Oh, yeah.
Psychic Fair. Yes, and it actually shows his set of bones that's out. So you can see them there. Um, and I think one of the things that I really like that Gene does is he sets sacred space every time he casts. So why don't you tell people about doing that?
Well, like also like I kind of said about how I can't do this over the video. I have to have your breath in it. Also, after every reading, I cleanse the space. I actually read on a small table. I sit on the ground, and if you can sit on the ground, I'll have you sit on the ground on a cushion with me. And after every reading, I cleanse the space. I walk it, circumvent it 3 times, and I cleanse it with a cleansing spray. Um, and then after every 3 readings, I actually wash the bones all the way and all the tokens with Florida water. And then I cleanse the table as well as on top of cleansing that as well, because breathing onto it and stuff like that. We have to cleanse in between each one, but then we have to do a little bit more in depth into the bones to cleanse them too, as well, because they get a lot hot too. Sometimes we've got a lot going on.
Yes, yes. And what about, I know you put the cloth down.
Hmm.
So whenever you put your cloth down, are you creating sacred space?
That is as well, because it is also. I've also washed those cloths every time at the beginning of the day, before working, and stuff like that. But it also does kind of just consecrate like your meal and stuff like that. When you have a placemat and then you put your plate on top, you're just setting your table for for your meal and stuff like that. So it's doing the same kind of thing for the bones as well. Is it's just setting it. And I've also started to create a couple different mats as well. Like I have one that's a
Mhm.
flower of life. See,
He
yeah,
was
that,
looking for his
yeah,
word.
yeah. I lost the words.
Line.
Yeah, but and I also have a 3 past, present, and future one. So there's definitely different mats and different formats that you can set up for your casting system, and set it up in different ways. I've even thought about doing like a 9 realms version for like for my Norse pagans out there and stuff like that for those readings as well.
You see, I love how you're learning and growing with this and tailoring it.
Huh.
And Gene actually sells beginning lithomancy kits. He has some made up,
Yep.
and they have some basic bones in them. Tell people how you get bones.
I, Actually, that's one of the reasons why, if you can't tell, I'm in the back of a Starbucks. I live out in the middle of the country, in the middle of nowhere. We live on like 30 acres of forest, and I walk the forest. I find the bones and what's come there, what's been dragged there, what has been, it's all naturally sourced. It's all naturally sourced, and I clean it myself. And then I whiten them naturally as well, and I go to farmers and stuff like that as well, who I source from as well. And we just use them that way. My beginner kits have a foreleg, a back leg, a backbone, and then a seed, which is in essence the bone of the earth or a plant, only it's got the potential to grow, unlike most other bones or hard surfaces. Then I also have a stone in there, which is another hard bone of the earth. And let's see what else. I have seashells in there as well, from the ocean as well. Actually, from Galveston. I source all my seashells and ocean products from Galveston, and stuff like that. So those are in there as well. And all of them, I've written out all their correspondences, what they mean, like how the foreleg is more for working and stuff like that, whereas the back leg is more for travel because you're pushing off and going, and different things like that, and how to try and make sense of that a little bit. Because why is the back leg good for travel, whereas the foreleg is not? Because we're doing things with our arms, which would be the foreleg. We work with our forearms or the forelegs of the animal and things like that. So it's kind of trying to make
What?
sense of that.
You see what I said? It's a fascinating subject,
It
isn't it, Mary?
truly is. And let's see.
Hi,
Okay, we will
everyone.
call you Charmaine, and hello to Chaley, Marguerite, and Elio. Thank you so
Hi.
much for joining us.
So,
Hi.
does anybody out there have any questions about lithomancy? I mean, you can sit here and listen to us talk, and but I know that somebody's got to have a question out there.
So
Um,
please post your questions, and I will tell you, I attended a workshop on bone reading many years ago,
Awesome.
and the woman reading it started off by telling us about pulling over to the side of the road, scooping up a raccoon that had been hit by a car, and taking it home and boiling it down to uh, get the bones. Now, my wonderful hubby is not pagan, and he's put up with candles and incense everywhere, stones stuck here, there, and yon, the coven practicing in the backyard, and been a good sport about all of it. But I'm just picturing the scene if I'd come home with a raccoon
I would say I haven't come
surrender
home with a
down for.
raccoon or two myself.
I can sympathize with your husband. I cannot quite bring myself to do that, but my youngest daughter is home now, and her partner, she was fascinated by bones too. So now I have somebody to scoop and
Yeah.
do things. Yes, Kathleen will do that. However, she said that she drew the line. She had her pick up a skunk once, and she said, "Never again,
Mm,
never again will she do a skunk."
Yeah, I think
and
a skunk can keep its bones.
Yes.
yeah, I would say though that the those bones though would be really great for resilience and steadfastness, because you've got to be firm in yourself to be a skunk and not care and still be happy and live your life.
Now,
Uh,
this is true, and skunks are actually good-natured creatures, and they prefer not to let loose.
I've
Hmm.
always been told that skunks symbolize respect because there's few animals that get as much respect as a skunk.
Oh yeah.
Stay a wide berth. I like Charmaine is talking about how she likes entomology and bugs. Does
Oh,
she
I love.
like that?
I really like bugs too. The only bad thing though is they're very delicate, and some of the bones you got to be careful for. Although I have seen some tokens with like it, you've seen like those bugs in like resin balls or stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
You could do something similar and stuff like that. Although the maybe not a ball though, but still you could probably kind of work that in there some kind of way. But they would be too delicate
Maybe
on
a
their own.
disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would be delicate if they were just by themselves. Although one of the artists at Fair, Miss Sandy, she takes in natural objects and she covers them in resin. So
Yes.
can you imagine a resin covered bug?
Oh, yes.
I'm going to be giving Miss Sandy ideas out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of bugs, I have a beetle of some sort buzzing around my monitor.
It's going,
We
you're talking
summoned
about
it.
encountering our kind. Uh, but Charmaine could definitely, she's quite the artist too. She could probably make bugs that were in resin. And those could be because, like, a hornet would be
Uh-huh.
about the sting,
Uh-huh.
the sting and bring
Yeah.
awareness,
Mm-hmm.
ants
Well,
about the
uh,
industry, you know.
I've heard wasp used for like hex breaking, and I've also used hornet nest to symbolize the transient spot between air and earth, for my
Okay.
quarters and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Because they definitely, you're right, hornets and wasps definitely have that away, get away, territorial aggressiveness. So that's why it's a warding, bane kind of stay away
Yeah,
use.
I personally,
I
we
like
live in
that.
the
That's a
same
good one,
place.
Charmaine.
What?
I was just about to say we are expecting cicadas here next year. So if you needed cicada shells, Jean, I'm sure I could collect
Oh,
you some.
oh, I would never ever turn them away. I know that I find them all the time. Like I collect bugs too. Like I think I've got almost like everything. Like I've got praying mantises and wasps and beetles of all kinds, moths, butterflies. I love them as well. They're just so great.
I think we should have Charmaine on to talk about bugs. She does
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Charmaine, we would
I'm
love to have
telling
you
you.
on sometime to discuss using bugs.
Yeah, because that is a whole nother facet of spell work and
Oh yeah.
the thing of it is this is everything psychic, but face it, a lot of us do other things.
Oh well, yeah, and that's a wonderful thing
Psychism
because
and magic are brother or siblings.
They are. They're in the same family. Now then they don't always want to coexist well together, but most of the time they do.
oh yeah, especially when you go into like shamanism and like some of the other versions of it. Like when you at least respect nature and delve into at least that part of the psychic nature and stuff like that, you definitely are going to feel a lot more connected to everything that has or will live.
What do you think about adding a set of runes into your because rune casting a lot of times you can empty out all the runes and do a rune cast, and I have done that. So do you think that they
And
would
runes could
help?
be carved on bones.
Yeah,
Yes, or stones or yeah.
yeah. I've seen it, seen them, and they runes have traditionally been always carved on bone. of some kind, whether it was an antler bone or a knuckle bone from like a hog or something like that. So I've thought about it, and but I haven't gotten there yet specifically. Um, I just haven't had the right bone or the right piece that has called to me, because every time, like we mentioned earlier, that I organically source and find bones from my properties and nearby farmages and stuff like that. Well, every time I find and clean a bone, I then sit with a bone as I cleanse it, and I find out what it wants. What does it want? Does it want to rest? If it wants to rest, I will bury it. If it wants to be appreciated, I put it in a piece of artwork. And if it wants to work, then I will put it in a casting system. Um, and if it wants to continue to live on like that, um, and I find out what it wants as I cleanse it and sit with it before, and then that tells me where it's going to go. And that depends on, this part of this raccoon may want to rest, so this is where it goes. This part, oh my, the snake wants to go into artwork, so now it's going to be earrings now and stuff like that. So it just depends on what I end up with. And so far, I just haven't ended up with anything that wants to be that yet. But I have considered it.
Yeah, well, runes can also be stones and there's other things, but what you're saying is those things need to be natural and naturally sourced.
Oh, yeah. And I've thought about, like, I like your question about how some people use tarot and oracle cards together. For me and my lithomancy, cards just never really worked. And yeah, I've worked with runes before, so but they never really clicked with me like how my bone casting system has worked. The way I probably will incorporate it will be having a rune piece in there instead of runes in my set, like a complete rune set and a complete bone set. For me, I that just wouldn't work so much. I know that some readers do incorporate oracle and tarot together and mix them together. For me, that particular system just hasn't worked out for me. But that since the runes did have that organic, natural origin, I might be able to incorporate like one of those. But that's just my personal experience and practice.
Hmm.
Whereas I kind of use shells and other stones and stuff like that in my system as well. It's mixed, but not wholly one or another. But I totally agree. That's kind of what lithomancy is. It has the runes, the stones, the wood, the charms, everything, etc., etc., etc. Just little bits of etc., etc., and etc.
Okay,
Well,
Jean, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
So, when you are doing a reading, like when I read tarot, a lot of times I am doing it intuitively, so I may not interpret a card the same way
Hmm.
for two different people, depending on what I am getting intuitively. So, when you are doing a reading, are you working intuitively or are you saying, okay, this particular object comes up? This object always means such and such.
I typically will say I intuit, because the thing about it is pieces can mean the same thing over and over again. But like we were mentioning at the very beginning with that turtle piece, it depends. Is it going towards? Is it going away? What is it going towards or away from? If it's going towards this over here, that piece over there means danger. Is it going away from the danger? A lot of it is intuitive because a lot of it means so much depending on what's going to, away from. Where is it at? Is it up here and down there? Or is it all clumped on top of each other? Is it all spread out all over the place and nothing's touching nothing? So a lot of it has to be ended up being intuitive because it doesn't quite mean the same thing, even though it looks like it's almost the same thing.
yeah, you know,
Okay.
I think that that is an honest thing to say about any divination process. You know, the card or the stone or the whatever means what it means, but the layout is what really governs how it interrelates.
Yes.
And I think that's fair, and they go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say that everyone has to. I agree. Everyone has to intuit to a certain degree because otherwise, e- everyone would be able to read. I mean, everyone can read, but it would you just be able to throw out cards and it wouldn't have the same calling. It's weird. I don't know if I'm making that quite make sense.
Everyone can learn to read, but reading is a skill.
It's a skill, but it's also an art.
It's both, definitely.
It is definitely both. Um,
They said that was better said.
yeah. Well, I mean, I have taught cards for a long time, and I actually think that I'm going to start doing uh, a card Patreon class. I'm hoping. I've been working on that a little bit, but there's a lot of moving parts and pieces to it. And anybody that thinks that they're just going to sit down and read a book on lithomancy, on tarot, on numerology, and then that they're going to do readings for people, you got another think. And there's a lot to it. I mean, how
There
long
is.
have you worked on your lithomancy kit, Jean?
Oh, it's been I want to say I've been working on it for at least 5 years, but I may have only been practicing on it, but I've been doing the research, I've been building it, I've been trying it out and practicing because sometimes you think something will work and nope, look, it just flew off over there and broke into 100 different pieces.
Yeah.
Yes,
Didn't want to be part of the set. Didn't want to
Nope,
do it.
and you
Yeah.
can't force things sometimes, so
Hmm. And
very true.
anytime you try and force any kind of magical object, you're most likely going to get an explosion.
right back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're very right too. We do have to read the individual person. You can't be uh, a total hermit and be able to do this. You have to be a people person. You have to want to help and heal
Yes,
and be there for other people because this is a service. You're gonna have
it
to tell
is.
people things that are hard that they don't want to hear. Um, and sometimes it's
You're
trying to
going to have to be prepared to have someone sob on your shoulder and keep the Kleenex out when you're reading or under
find.
your table in your bag. I have Kleenex when I'm reading.
Hmm. And a lot of times they're good tears. It's not necessarily that people are mad. They're just it's such a release. And I call it God message days whenever
Mhm.
it's like that. Sometimes people want to hear it come out of somebody's mouth. They
Yeah,
know
Yes,
what you're going to
but
tell
they
them.
need some confirmation.
They do. And it is I think that it's a little bit addictive for people to read. And whenever somebody gets it and they're just like, "Oh my god, how did you know that?"
Mhm.
It's the
but
most wonderful feeling to be able to give that to somebody.
It
but
truly is.
it is, but I never hope I never lose the nerves from wanting to make sure I'm right, from making sure I'm not telling a lie or telling what I want the bones or this readout to say because I don't want to make you cry. I don't want to tell
Right.
you a hard truth because you asked me about your love life and it's not so happy. You know what you need to know, but you don't want to do it, or things like that. And it
Oh, if
hurts.
I, oh goodness, every time I've heard, I love this guy. Does he love me? Nope.
Normally, if you have to ask, the answer is no.
And most of the time
In
they know that.
in general, if there is a question,
Yeah, yeah. But it people don't understand. It really is hard for the person who reads because you have to just trust and you just have to open your mouth and let it come out and just trust that you're guided and that you're giving them the information they need and that it'll be received. And that's what you're still working on, finding your trust, Jean.
Yeah, and I'm working on
yeah,
to get a clientele
and,
too, because right
and
now everyone's
Shayla.
same question. How's my life going? It's like, can we get a little more specific of a question? Because sometimes that generalization can lead to a lot of broad questions or answers.
Yeah. Um,
Oh,
Sometimes I tell people to ask, what do I need to know now? If they're just
Yeah,
wanting a general reading, what do I
that's
need
a
to
good
know now?
question.
Yeah. What will serve me right now?
mhm.
Yeah. And I, most of
That
the
is
time, whenever
a
I'm
good one.
reading, I just ask for a direction. Are we wanting to know about love? Are we wanting to know about money? Or it's always love or money.
Yeah.
And since I read with tarot, I mean, and I'm sure the bones have done this for you, Jean. Sometimes somebody asks a question, and spirit is like, "That's not what you need to hear today."
Actually, I have a specific piece for that exact instance. It's called the attention piece. It's a giant metal pointer that just doesn't matter what your question was or what you think you need to pay attention to. This is what spirit or the universe is telling you. You need to pay attention to this. And whatever it's pointing to is what you should be really paying attention to. So I even have an exact piece exactly for that.
Yeah. So you see how you could really get into this, don't you, Mary? It's
I
fascinating.
do. It is interesting.
It really is. But it's not something that you're just gonna sit down and open your box of cards and go, oh, and
Uh,
play with them a little while and then start doing it. You're actually gonna have to work to learn, you
It's
know.
Hmm.
because practice, like I said, it is one of the very big keys of it because just when you throw it out, how is it grouped? Is everything spread out? Is it all topped off on each other? Are you actually having to dig your pieces out to see even where the piece that the client piece is supposed to be at? It's down under there, under everything. They're just swamped with everything.
Now, and that's another thing you do. You make a specific piece a client piece, correct?
Correct. I make the client hold it and meditate on it while I set the table and I set the intentions. I have them hold it, meditate on it, and then get them to put it in my basket with all the bones, and then they breathe onto the bones, and then I toss the bones. So, yeah, so there is a specific client piece that represents you, the core of you in this set.
So, is that something everyone chooses for themselves, or do you have a piece that just represents everybody?
It's the designated client uh, person of interest piece. So if I was to read for myself, that piece would be me. But if I'm reading for somebody else, that piece is them.
And that's the reason you have to cleanse them each time because they put their energy into it.
And energy
Mm.
into it, and then you breathe your own breath and your own spirit onto the basket and onto the bones as well. That's why I have to cleanse it afterwards, because you've infused that air, your spirit onto all of it as well, and it's all been charged now specifically for your direction of your life and yourself.
I think it's just a fascinating subject. Is there particularly good books, good bones, good books like for Charmaine to read? If
Um,
she want, what books do you like?
There's there's a few of them on there. There's the Miss Gayle, the one that I had recommended you. That
Hmm.
one on it was just lithomancy. It's a purple book. Should have brought it with me. Just lay it up. But there's two readers, two books on Amazon that I had gotten. One of them, it was the lithomancy one. It's her. She's the student, and her teacher also writes another book from there as well. That are both
Can
fantastic.
you think of the author's name?
Uh, Catherine something. One second.
Oh. Hmm. Uh, And, books are good, but there's nothing like learning from somebody who does it.
Oh yeah.
This is true. There is not.
Yes. And I actually think the day that Jean came over and that we worked on this a little bit, that we learned a lot from each other.
Oh yeah. There definitely is because you have to like mentioned earlier on reading people. There is definitely learning certain things. How the bones will react to you and how they react to the different parts of the set and bounce off of each other and tell the stories in different ways because we're all different and we all interact in different unique ways and that brings up amazing different connections and stuff like that and sometimes you just end up learning your set better with each casting because of your different clients.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
It really is a fascinating subject. I have been talking to Mary about you and lithomancy since I met her. I'm totally
Yeah, she has.
fascinated by this. I truly am. And, I am one of those people that pick up and do readings and do different types of things. And this is something that I know I can't rush. Ah, there you go. And how does that
Right.
die, Jean? I can't quite read it.
Lithomancy, Divination, and Spellcraft with Stones, Crystals, and Coins by Reverend Dr. John St. German. And then let me find the other one I recommend as well. It was one of them.
Maybe we can eventually get one of these authors, Mary. Wouldn't that be cool?
Oh, that would be so amazing.
Be awesome.
Yes. If you are out there, and because they're obviously lithomancy people, if they hear us mentioning them, they need to contact us, huh, Mary?
Oh, for,
Yes, contact us. Or
Yes.
if you want to talk about your form of divination
for
on our
real.
show, please contact us.
Anybody that does these different unusual types of divination, because Mary and I by no means do all of them. Between us we do quite a bit of different things, but I always like to learn and do and know different things. Part of
Oh,
the reason I'm so fascinated with Jean.
that's how we learn and grow because that's I like I said have always been intuitive and I just knew that I was called to do something and I just couldn't tell what it was and eventually your curiosity drove you to the right spot and I think that's how we all are is that we all keep on searching and searching for that one thing that we are called to do and sometimes that's all you have to do is just follow your curiosity to it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know about you guys, but I personally find that the things that I do divination with, for me, getting a new set of cards is like a new chapter in my life whenever I start
Ooh.
to use them.
Oh, definitely.
A new set of learning.
Oh, it's definitely fun I always love my finding a new piece or something like that because every time I find a new piece, my set changes because each thing starts to build off of each other and now they interact together differently. Sometimes I've added new pieces to have two or three other pieces go, nope, they're done. Nope, not together. Okay,
So,
retire.
so sometimes if you add something in new, you have to take something else out.
Right.
Wow. That's pretty fascinating that they work together in that way. And
That really is.
it's a living divination system.
Oh,
And
it is.
I've studied the Viking runes more and the casting of runes and the casting of lots, which
Hmm.
is very similar to what you're talking about.
And here's another recommendation I have for bones or books. I'm going to show you the cover real quick and then I'll read the cover.
There we go.
Thank you.
It's called Bones, Shells, and Curios, a contemporary method of casting the bones by Michelle Johnson.
Yeah. And so
All right.
you
That one I have read until it literally has fallen apart. So that one is a definite recommend. And
oh,
then the other one, the purple one, it was an easier read for understanding different type, not necessarily types, but the way they listed things on certain pages just was a really easy reference page to go flip, flip, flip. Here's all the different animal correspondences. Flip, flip, flip. Here's all the bone types of bone correspondences. Flip, flip, flip. You know, it just had a lot certain reference points that were a lot better for learning.
yeah. And what would you recommend to somebody that they hear this and they want to start? Where's a good starting point?
I would just recommend let's let's see. I would just start with reading one of those books. Both of those books are going to have a brief history because there is so many different, each society has different forms of it, like whether or not it was with tortoise shells, there was a whole section or society that used tortoise shells instead for their bone casting or bone reading. So I would say there's so many different types in each of these different societies that I would just start with learning and reading your histories on them to find out what calls to you, because the how over half of the bone casting systems are going to be a three toss system, of a three system, like an I Ching almost, or a knuckle system where you toss something so many times. Which sides did you get? Did you get one or two? How many times? And things like that. So depends on what's going to be your calling, and there's so much variety there that that's where you need to start, is to start doing your research on the history of the bones and stuff like that to find out which system's going to call to you. Is it going to be an eclectic, like me, casting system that has tokens and bones and shells and seeds and bones and amulets, or is it just going to be a knuckle bone only, or is it going to be a burning the bones and reading the cracks, or which kind of bone casting will it be? So just that would be my recommendation, is to read it. It's like there's differences between oracle cards, and tarot cards,
Grow
and
and
regular
Mhm.
cards, and then so many different other cards. Just find out the history so that you can find out where your calling is. Not the one you heard about, but if you got heard about it and got curious, follow the curiosity and see if through the histories, if there's actually some part of that that held true, or if it was just curiosity and it moved you on to the next thing.
for instance, if you've always been drawn to Native American things, look for Native American bone casting
Hmm.
and start there.
Yeah.
Start there. Or if you've been drawn to like the Norse and Viking runes, you can
Yeah.
start with that. And yeah,
And the Norse Viking runes were always like on little antler pieces and parts too, so it's still part of the bone casting system. Although in a more modern age, we've used plastics and other things like that to kind of um, sanitize it for Western society, but that was the original origins. But it would still hold true. So find out.
yeah. Find out what works for you. I mean, runes were actually put on wood, they were put on bone, they were put on stone, clay.
Everything.
There's so many different things, and we do not realize how many rooms are actually used in our everyday society either. They
Oh, yeah.
show up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they really do. So, what else can you think of that you would like to ask Jean Mary?
Oh, one thing I would like to bring up that is kind of important
Okay.
for me in the bone casting system is I always cover my bones in a natural substance. They're kept in a um, grass basket, and then they're wrapped in cloth. Every time I don't ever let my bones touch anything, like wrap them in plastic or anything like that. I always keep them in a nice basket so that they can breathe, so to speak. They're not actually confined and wrapped up, that they still have a breathable space, a natural breathable space. Um, Only consideration, bags are fine to keep them in and stuff like that. Just please don't wrap them in plastic. Give your bones a little bit of respect.
In general, I would tell people all the
Hi,
time.
Brenda.
Hi, Brenda. I would tell people for any magical working, any kind of divination system, in general, to stay away from plastic and synthetics. You agree, Mary?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, a lot of people teach that, although I have to say that Reverend Don, the retired in office, head of my tradition, says he's kept many tarot decks in plastic bags.
Huh. I don't know.
So,
You know?
You know, it's also one of those things that probably can be also appropriation. Like some people argue about how veganism is better, but some people are like, you eat what's available and what's necessary for you to continue. Same kind of thing is, is the only thing you have plastic? Then if that's what you have and what you need to use, then as long as you intentionally use it and put your intention in your spirit to cleansing it, then why can't it be clean?
Yeah.
and this is true. So I would say do what you feel like you need to do.
Yes. Overall, though, most of the time I do avoid plastic. Yeah. It just, uh, my kids, and my nieces and nephews, they learned because they would want to get me jewelry, and they would think it looked cool, and that they would buy it for me, like a little present. And if it's not a real substance, oh, that's pretty, and yeah. So they all know that
And
to be real, or I'm not going to do it.
oh, I see my nephew Corey has chimed in. My survival does not disrupt your principles. Hello, nephew.
So, what is the big takeaway that you would like people to have about lithomancy?
um that one thing is that you see little bits and pieces of it in movies and stuff like that, like Studio Ghibli movies. You'll see the old woman tossing stones and bones in the corner and stuff like that, and then telling you have to go on a grand journey. So you see little bits and pieces, but that's such a small fraction that it's hidden everywhere, and there's so many different forms of it that there's so much for you to be able to explore, tailor, change, and learn about, that it definitely, if you're even a little bit curious, definitely search it out, find out about it, because it's fascinating, just absolutely fascinating how much of it can mean so much, so little, or whatever. It's just amazing and mind-blowing. So that's what my biggest takeaway would be, is that if you're curious, find out, because it's surprising how wide and varied it is, that learn a little bit. I did, and I can't tell you how amazing, and it's changed my life, and it's continues to do so and helps me reach a higher state of being and fulfillment. Like, and then I'm able to help others with their own lives as well. It's just, it's so nice. It's great.
Yeah. It really is. People don't understand. We don't necessarily do this because it's easy, people.
Mm.
No, it's a calling.
It's a calling. You definitely have to want to do this. It was the same for me whenever I finally saw my first deck of cards. It's like, I am going to learn how to do this. I
Mhm.
will study and I will learn. And I remember taking as much time as you did, and everybody being, "Oh, I don't want to see those cards again," because you're 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 like so laser focused. You are going to do this, and it really takes that kind of dedication if you're really going to learn a divination system. Um,
They're very thorough because people are very varied and we're very wide range of people in all shapes and colors. And so the nuances of people have to be able to be told in a divination set. And so it takes a lot to learn and then a lot to apply to a human, a real human, and then to do so accurately, and then thirdly to do it humanely.
Yes.
yes. Hmm. And the thing of it is, if people study a divination system, it's not always about reading for other people. Sometimes it's about strengthening your own intuition. Some people
Yes.
won't ever read for anybody else, but they're learning how to get in touch with their own emotions, feelings, their own intuition.
Oh yeah.
Well, and we are coming up on the top of the hour
What?
here, Jean. I want to thank you
All
so
right.
much for coming tonight. This has been
Thank
great. I
you.
know I have learned so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
Fascinating.
much.
Yes.
I appreciate
I
both y'all. We're both lovely, and thank you so much. I didn't even notice the whole hour go by. It was so great,
Yeah,
ladies.
just a
Thank you,
clue.
Brenda. Thank you,
and
Corey. Thank you, Sharma. Thank you, everybody who showed up. Amber, everybody. Marjorie,
Yes.
Elio, and everyone who will see this eventually sometime.
Yes.
yeah, thank you everyone in chat who's been interacting with us. And I'm just going to throw this out in August 1st. We
Oh,
are going to
Andrea.
be Andrea.
Let
Well,
me go back and
give
watch the Pumpkin
Facebook
Real
a
Estate.
few minutes and it will load back up and you can watch the broadcast again since you missed it. And I just want to add that starting August the 1st, Pagan World TV will be running a special programming around the Parliament of World's Religions. The Corellian tradition has been to all the parliaments of the modern era, and we have got audio and video from most of them. So we're going to be running those leading up to this year's parliament in Chicago starting August 13th. And just keep watching the channel. We will be going live from the Parliament with live coverage from the floor of the Parliament, as well as live interviews and coverage of the various events. And as you can see on the ticker at the bottom, we are running CorellianPublishing.com concert to the gods on August 19th, the day after the Parliament. We are going to have a special presentation you can only see if you purchase this ticket for just $10. We're going to have a symposium. Byron Ballard will be our keynote speaker. She'll be giving her remarks on what she's witnessed at the Parliament. So will Reverend Don Lewis, and we'll have other speakers. We'll also have a concert with music from Brian Hankey and Suriel Lynn and Cloud the Pagan Rapper and others. So please go grab your ticket for just $10.
Yes, and you can watch this via the Roku app. You go to Pagan World TV.
Yes. Now, you're not going to get the concert to the gods that way. We'll be sending our ticket holders a special link that the broadcast will not be on Roku. That will be an exclusive.
Right. But this show you can go back and see that way, and you can see all of the other ones we've done and a variety of different content.
Yes.
Yes. So
Thank
please
you, everyone, for joining us.
tune in to Pagan World TV and everything psychic.
Goodbye, everyone. Blessed
Peace.
be.
Bye, guys. Bless be.